Did you know? Sonic's trademark speed was actually inspired by the original Super Mario Bros. In issue 260 of Nintendo Power, Sonic's co-creator Yuji Naka revealed the initial concept for Sonic the Hedgehog's fast gameplay came from playing level 1-1 of Super Mario Bros. Over and over again as fast as he could, since you always had to play the level first regardless of whether you used warp zones or not. Naka said, "I always tried to get through the level as fast as I could, and that inspired the initial concept for Sonic the Hedgehog." Sonic's design itself had different inspirations. Sonic's shoes were inspired by Michael Jackson's boots and the color scheme of Santa Claus. Sonic's personality was, interestingly, inspired by the 42nd President of the United States, Bill Clinton. Michael Jackson has other connections to the Sonic franchise. According to Sega Technical Institute director Roger Hector, Jackson was initially brought in during the development of Sonic 3 to compose some music, even though his involvement was never mentioned in any of the game's credits. Jackson's removal was supposedly due to the child abuse allegations against him that arose at that time, and his removal led to the music being reworked. In December 2009, Jackson's composer Bradley Buxer, who is credited in Sonic 3 as Brad Buxer, told French magazine Black and White that Jackson was involved with some of Sonic 3's compositions, and was supposedly not credited because he wasn't happy with how the Genesis' lacking sound chip handled the music. More Sonic games have interesting stories surrounding their soundtracks. Hideki Naganuma, who composed most of the music for Sonic Rush, usually sampled audio from many other mediums when making his music. For Sonic Rush, Naganuma sampled audio from at least 14 other creations. An obvious sample is in the track Back to Back, which uses the main melody from Louie Louie. Others are harder to spot, such as the track Wrapped in Black, which bizarrely uses audio sampled from a speech by human rights activist Malcolm X. Sonic's popularity reached farther than most video game icons. In 1993, Sonic the Hedgehog was chosen to be the first video game character in the Macy's Thanksgiving Parade. Unfortunately, the balloon popped on its one and only flight by being pushed into a lamppost by strong gusts of wind, hurting a child and a police officer on its descent. Because of this, the balloon was retired. A differently designed Sonic came back in 2011 and has been there since. Sonic also won the award of the longest-running video game comic in 2008. Archie Comics made over 200 issues, including specials. Sonic's comic started in 1993 and is still going today. Sonic has even influenced the naming of scientific discoveries. There's a gene called Sonic Hedgehog, named after Sonic himself. The gene also has an inhibitor, something that can stop the process of a gene, named Robotnikinin, named after Sonic's nemesis, Dr. Ivo Eggman Robotnik. A lot of the content in Sonic games has also been reworked, and sometimes cut entirely. In the original Sonic the Hedgehog, Sonic was going to wear goggles. The goggles can still be found in the game's ROM. It was originally thought they were an item that helped Sonic breathe underwater, but one of the game's developers, Dean Sitton, stated the goggles were simply a cosmetic change and appeared whenever Sonic was underwater. There's also a cut enemy in the game's data named Splats. Splats has no programming attached to it. Interestingly, Splats appeared several times in promotions during Sonic's development. It was featured in a set of promotional trading cards for the game, on the box of a collection of Japanese Sonic figures, and was even featured in Sonic the Comic and Archie Comics' Sonic the Hedgehog. Sonic 2 has several cut areas. The most well-known cut area is Hidden Palace Zone. Hidden Palace Zone was never completed, but most of the first act is playable in two of the game's known prototype builds. It was one of the first zones created, but wasn't updated much after the initial phase of development. Yuji Naka revealed the zone was originally going to be a place where the player would warp to after collecting all 7 Chaos Emeralds. The player would then be able to transform into Super Sonic, but the idea was ultimately scrapped and the ability to transform into Super Sonic was given to the player from the get-go. The zone is accessible in the final version of Sonic 2 by using a Game Genie code, but almost all of the artwork is missing and the zone is essentially unplayable. The zone also had 3 enemies that were ultimately unused, 2 dinosaurs resembling some kind of theropod and a stegosaurus, and a bat. There was also a forest level called Wood Zone that seemed to have been worked on for a longer time than the Hidden Palace Zone, and a desert area called Dust Hill Zone. Dust Hill Zone seemed to be based on American deserts and was cut due to time constraints. Another zone named by fans, Rock Zone, was going to be Dust Hill Zone but at a previous point in time. There was also going to be a winter-themed zone based on Dust Hill Zone, where all the cacti were replaced with Christmas trees. Metropolis Zone was originally only 2 acts long, but it became 3 when another zone was reworked and merged with it. This zone was called Genocide City Zone. Level designer Tom Payne said the name was chosen by the Japanese developers, who didn't have a strong grasp on the English language. The zone was renamed to Cyber City Zone to be less offensive before being reworked and merged with the Metropolis Zone. Even entire games in the franchise have been reworked. Sonic 2 and Sonic CD were originally planned to be essentially the same game, as were Sonic 3 and Sonic & Knuckles. Sonic 2 and Sonic CD naturally grew apart and became separate games because the developers were in two different locations, but Sonic 3 and Sonic & Knuckles became two separate games because of time constraints and manufacturing costs. Splitting the game into two parts gave the team more time to finish the second half. The Sonic World level in Sonic Jam was originally going to be a full 3D Sonic game and was actually a prototype for Sonic Adventure. Due to technical issues in the upcoming release of the Dreamcast, the project was moved away from the Sega Saturn in favor of the Dreamcast, and whatever work they had done on the Saturn was turned into Sonic World. Sonic and the Secret Ring started out as a port of 2006's Sonic the Hedgehog, but Sega wanted to focus on a game for the Wii's launch that focused on the Wii controller's capabilities. They ultimately decided to change it into something entirely new. That's all for today, but don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Make sure you also check out didyouknowgaming.com, where we post gaming trivia every single day. If you liked this video, check out our other videos. And check this out. Check this out right here. Check out the latest dub of the North Star. I mean, look at it. Look at that. And I sound like a normal person in it. For real.